That makes 11:30 on my computer. Welcome everybody who's joined us. It's really great to see a broad range of people that are listening in. Welcome Helen and Don, and I'll introduce you shortly. And thank you very much for joining this Cybersecurity as a Journey webinar, where we're going to talk you through the incremental steps that can help you as a small to medium-sized business create an ecosystem of cybersecurity. And that's straightforward, and hopefully will dispel some myths and provide some more education on the points that we're going to cover. So first of all, it's for me to introduce the panel, and today I'm really lucky to be joined by Don and Helen, who have come from two very separate businesses. And so Don, I'll come to you first if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thanks to Tom. Good morning. My name's Don Naisby. I'm a 25-year veteran of IT operations and information security, primarily out of the financial services sector. Now working as a principal consultant in the SME market at Freeman Clarke.
Thanks, Don. It's great to have you here. And I think your experience, especially from being a VCSO, is going to be really valuable for the audience that we've got today. So great to have you on board. Helen, over to you. Really brilliant to have you joining us today. If you could provide us with an introduction.
Thanks ever so much, Tom. So I'm Helen Barge. I'm the managing director at a small but perfectly formed consultancy company called Risk Evolves, and we love governance, risk and compliance. But in my spare time, I'm also a volunteer with the Federation of Small Businesses. That's not to be confused with any other organisation that may have the initials FSB, but the volunteer with the FSB, and I represent and have discussions around cybercrime and how we best prevent small businesses from becoming victims.
Thanks, Helen. I think that unique insight into small businesses and the realities that they're facing at the moment, especially with their cybersecurity issues, going to be really valuable for us to talk through and add quite a lot. My name's Tom Exelby. I am head of cybersecurity for Red Helix. We're a managed security service provider. I'm about 6 months into my role after having finished a 15-year career in the British military, where I focus mostly on risk management and security consulting. So as you can see, we've got a broad panel with us today, and we'll jump straight into the content. And we're really looking forward to sharing our insights with you into how you can create that security wrapper for your business and provide you some extra insight into what can aid you in that journey. So we're going to go through, initially we're going to talk about the threat landscape, and this is going to involve each of us going through some separate areas. And to start off with, no cybersecurity presentation would be complete without discussing some of the current threats. We're then going to look at the SME economic environment, and then finally look at some cyber myths. And this will form the first part of our presentation before we then come on to discussing some solutions which we agree on are really positive impacts that you can have within your business to enhance cybersecurity. So first of all, it's down to me to talk about cyber threats, and I promise I won't labour on this too much because a lot of it is going to be quite well understood by the environment and the people that are listening in already. I've highlighted there the 4 key threats that Red Helix sees as being most prevalent for small to medium-sized businesses and of growing importance into 2025. First of all is ransomware, and I think, well, and statistics are showing that this is still the most prevalent threat within the UK for businesses. I believe that that is going to continue into 2025. The aim here is for malicious actors and cyber criminals to get into your systems, to lock them down and encrypt data, which is going to mean that they are unable to function with the view to then extorting ransom from those businesses. But bearing in mind, in this sort of situation, you're dealing with cyber criminals who are particularly unpredictable, and therefore what we're seeing as more prevalent and more common is people are paying the ransom, but then the systems are not being brought back up online, and or their data is still getting stolen, or the attack occurs again 10 days later for the same ransom. And so a very sticky and common issue which we need to ensure we address. Next is business email compromise. Now, this is based around social engineering designed to trick employees into making transactions or escalating privileges. It looks and feels legitimate, And that's usually because the malicious actor will have been into your environment. They will understand the way that key figures may speak or compose emails, and they'll probably be using AI in order to generate this response and generate this likeness with the individual that they're trying to impersonate. Something to be careful of, and this is on the rise. So this is something that we're going to see more of in 2025 off the back of ransomware as well. Thirdly, ID theft. This uses stolen personal identifiable information or credentials to access systems, and what intelligent feeds are showing is that there are up to 4 billion credentials on the dark web, which is a scary amount, given how many passwords, well, how many people are using information systems. It probably means that if you've got a password, it's probably on the dark web for sale somewhere. The aim is to access data or make transactions, again, similar to business email compromise. It's difficult to detect due to the fact that it's legitimate access because they're using stolen credentials, and therefore having the correct security solution to look for the identifiers for this as happening is really important. And then finally, malware, a well-known phrase, malicious software to harm or control computers or networks. Humans are likely to download it. It's then likely to steal, spy, or control your systems. And I think what stands out for me is all four of those attack the largest, they prey on the largest attack surface that business has, and that is the humans in the business, the employees and the people interacting with the systems. So something to be aware of there. Moving on to Helen to discuss SME and the economy.
Thank you, Tom. So the purpose of this slide is really just to position where SMEs are as a contributor to the UK economy. Now, everybody can read, so I'm not going to read these slides verbatim, but there's probably a couple of key messages and key stats to pull out. One is just the sheer volume of small businesses that we have in the UK, 5.6 million small organisations, and we contribute, as it says there, a significant amount of money to the UK economy, £1.6 trillion worth of money into the economy. Now, why am I putting those numbers there? Very simply is if the SME market, if the SMEs are hit and impacted by cybercrime, then clearly there is an opportunity that could make a significant impact to the UK, have a significant impact to the UK economy. So that was all I was wanting to put out there, Tom. And unfortunately, small businesses are sometimes made to look as though they're either ignorant or maybe disorderly, or they may not see cybersecurity as a priority. And I'm going to be a little bit of a voice of defence as to why small businesses, and I'm a small business owner, may not see cybersecurity as a priority. Now, I will just say there are clearly some exceptions that will prove a rule. So there are some amazing small businesses out there that have got all the certifications, that have got Cyber Essentials, that have got ISO 27001. However, when we speak with small businesses, there are a few things that are common. So understanding, for example, the industry is absolutely brilliant at jargon. It's brilliant at generating three-letter acronyms, and it's also amazingly good at having an inability to speak in plain English. And therefore, when we're talking with small businesses, we must make sure we speak in a language that every business can understand. Fear. As an industry, the industry is really, really good at selling fear, and fear does not sell. It's actually quite a scary place at the moment when you're trying to run a small business. And therefore, it's important that we change that fear sell tactic into something that talks about really good cyber hygiene. What are the opportunities, for example? Priorities. Now, priorities may not be the number one, cybersecurity may not be the number one priority within the business. You know, at the moment, if we just look at the news headlines, for example, things that will be taking energy away from a small business owner include factors like cash flow, late payments, energy cost, interest rate increases and decreases, national insurance increases, skills, resource, pay demands, employee morale. All of that means that cybersecurity may not be, and the reason I've got crocodiles there, may not be the crocodile that's closest to the canoe. Skills. Understanding the level of skills required to support the business versus the capability and competency of the people within the business is a key thing. What was appropriate for a business at one point in its journey may no longer be appropriate. We may have people that are single points of failure, and clearly we've obviously got an overall general understanding of staff awareness of things like phishing emails or things like business email compromise. Cost is another huge factor. So it's not just the cost of hardware or software, but the cost of training, so cost of change. So whether or not that means training and education for staff, whether it means decommissioning one system and commissioning another system, there is potentially likely to be investment required. And we know from government surveys that the amount of money that SMEs are prepared to invest in information security has decreased since 2021. Sell, sell, sell. Whenever we speak to small businesses, and I see this as well working with some of our clients, there's little understanding the capability within their existing tool set and whether or not there's functionality that is there that they're simply not utilizing. But there is huge pressure on them to buy new, to buy and upgrade software, etc. So they're not investigating and exploiting what they must have versus nice to have tools. And one of the other things that we see is lack of access to great resources like Tom and like Don in terms of CTOs, CISOs and other trusted resources. It won't happen to me. This is what I call the cloak of invincibility. And I know Don's going to come on to this as well. There's lies, damn lies and statistics, I think is the phrase, isn't it? You can have a number of small businesses in the room and it's all very well and good saying that 2 out of 5 small businesses or whatever the current stat is have been affected by ransomware or business email compromise. If a small business stands in a room and can't see somebody else that's been impacted by cybercrime, then there is a natural inclination to say, this won't happen to me. This is only something that's going to happen to big organizations, isn't it? It's not my responsibility. So very, very sadly, a number of small organizations will think that this is not their responsibility. It's not for them to fix. And perhaps it's a topic for either police or government or larger organizations and institutions to resolve. And therefore, I believe that all of us on this call, and certainly all of the people speaking on this call, have got an obligation to try and dispel some of that, to try and encourage organizations just to take those very basic steps that we can all do to protect ourselves. And finally, this is one of my hobby horse topics. It's around the IT, the service provider, the SME way say, my IT provider does all of that for me. Now, what we do know within the UK is we have a very, very mixed provision of IT service. Some of it is absolutely first class, outstanding. Some of it is okay, and some of it is downright dreadful. We have seen service providers that have not been doing logging, have not been enforcing patch management, have not been enforcing strong passwords, for example. And as a consequence, some of the SME businesses that they are supporting have unfortunately suffered some sort of cyber attack. And just to give you some stats on that as well, 57% of small businesses and 36% of micro business will be using some sort of external IT provision. So all of this kind of comes together just to explain why cybersecurity may not be a business priority for SMEs across the UK. So Tom, I hand back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I really love that build slide. I think it gives us a really comprehensive view of some of the realities that we, from the cybersecurity industry, looking at other SMEs, are facing and what their biases might be and how we can build our discussions to support them in tackling those. Yeah, really brilliant slide. Thank you. And moving on next, Don, we've chatted quite a lot about the cyber myths that you see from the work that you've been doing. Do you want to just unpack some of those for us? That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, this slide here is really just some of the concerns or questions that we hear from clients when we go and speak to them. But key one out there is we're too small to be targeted. When you start talking about this one here, they couldn't be more wrong. Small businesses are somewhere in the region of about 3 times more likely to be targeted by cyber criminals than larger organizations. These criminal organizations, it's easier to go get $1 from 100 small businesses than it is to go after one big business and try and get $100. Those big businesses spend a lot of money on cybersecurity, and they're a hard nut to crack. The soft, low-hanging fruit actually sits in the SME market. So businesses couldn't be more wrong on that side of things. The other one is this false element of security, where when we speak with executives, they honestly do believe in their heart of hearts that there's adequate security measures are in place. However, surveys time and time again show that while 90% of of these executives believe that they have the capacity to successfully respond to a cyber attack, when you dig down beneath it, less than 1/3 of the firms have actually tested their cyber incident response plans inside the last 12 months. There's a big disconnect there between what they believe they're able to do and what they actually are capable of actually doing. Cybersecurity is traditionally seen as an IT problem, and effective cybersecurity really requires the involvement of all employees, not just the IT department. It starts from the top. Freeman Clarke recently held a webinar in October with a number of industry experts, and it was clear that successful cybersecurity postures and strategies only work if it is led by the CEO down. It has to start with that. It's a cultural thing. It's an organizational risk, not an IT risk, in our opinion. The other one is I have cyber insurance. They'll cover all my losses, and there are some policies out there that are so loosely worded that yes, they probably will do that one there. But cyber insurance is a fast and rapidly evolving industry at the moment, and we're starting to see that the bar is getting significantly higher just to get coverage, let alone worrying about whether or not your premiums are increasing. And because of the size of the problem of the industry, let's call it that, from a cybersecurity perspective, from a criminal perspective, it's becoming really, really expensive. But the bar is becoming a lot higher. The onus is a lot more on the organization to ensure that they have the necessary cybersecurity controls in place to prevent an attack. It's akin to making sure that you have your front door locked, that your windows are closed, those type of things. If you're going to leave them wide open, your insurance company very quickly is just going to turn around and say you're uninsurable. So please be aware of that. It's a myth that's out there. And the other one that is out there, which I also find this is an area of what I call conscious incompetence, right? This is where executives are aware that there is a problem. They know that cybersecurity is an issue out there, but it's too complex and they deem it to be too expensive to do anything about. So all they do is they stick their head in the sand, hoping that it'll go away and that they won't be impacted, right? There are, but however, effective cybersecurity measures, there are a number of them that you can do, which are just pure hygiene and common sense that are low cost or even free, right? They just require a little bit of thinking and doing on behalf of the business, like putting together an incident response plan. But the real positive, if there is a positive out of this, is that the cybersecurity industry is constantly evolving, and one company's challenge is another company's opportunity. Like Red Helix, there are a number of cost-effective outsourcing options available to the SME market, which come on a relatively well-placed cost per seat basis, which then take tier one cybersecurity best practices and tools and place them in the SME market at a relatively cost-effective point of view. So while there are many other myths that are out there around those ones, just in terms of the consulting and the conversations that I have with a number of executive, these are probably the top ones out there.
Thanks, Don. I think one of the really interesting themes there is that risk management and understanding of risk, and that links, insurance companies and why it's getting more expensive, because there is a genuine risk there. And, more broadly, they're the people that see the impact of that risk that maybe isn't getting more widely reported. That's a great slide as well. Thank you very much. So we've sort of talked about the landscape that small businesses find themselves in and unpacked the sort of cybersecurity situation that they may perceive to be in. What we want to do in the next part of this webinar is talk through structuring around people, process and technology, the different solutions that we can come across and the different techniques and procedures that we can put in place in order to aid our situation. I think what we're trying to achieve here is to highlight that there are incremental steps that can be completed by businesses that don't necessarily have to cost the earth, that are going to significantly reduce the risk that you are taking in terms of, or the risk that you're holding in terms of your cybersecurity. So first of all, we're looking at the people element with leadership and people with Helen.
So thanks, Tom. And Don's already mentioned for me my top piece of advice, the tone from the top. This is, as Don's already said, this is about the leadership leading. This is a business problem. This is not an IT problem. And therefore, the business leaders need to make sure that this is a message that is consistent throughout the organisation. I refer to the amazing Mervyn King, who in South Africa, who's head of governance, does a lot of governance work, and he uses the phrase tone from the top, music in the middle, beat of the feet on the ground. And that's very much making sure that the message is consistent from the top and then flows through the organisation. It doesn't matter whether you're a 5-person business or a 500-person business, that key message of leadership is absolutely key. My next one is do the basics well. And again, Don's referred to this. There are simple changes that can be made, and many of those are actually either no cost or very, really low cost that will make a significant difference. You don't need to be going out and spending oodles amount of money on massive amounts of software. You do not need to be going out and spending huge amount of money on new pieces of hardware. Quite frequently, it's doing the very simple stuff very, very well. So strong passwords, making sure you've got up-to-date antivirus, firewalls in place, and so on and so forth. All the things that are mentioned as part of the Cyber Essentials scheme need to be done well, but they need to be done consistently well. So this isn't just doing it once, it's making sure they're embedded right the way through the organisation. The other thing that we see is really important as well as having an open culture. Now, this is one where if there is an incident or even a near miss, somebody's almost clicked on a phishing email or somebody thinks that something's gone wrong, it's really important that they feel comfortable and confident to put their hand up and say, I think I've made a mistake. What you do not want, categorically do not want, is somebody to shut their laptop at the end of the day and just hope that whatever problem's gone away will have resolved itself by Monday, because it won't go away. It will just have manifested itself and will get a lot worse. And therefore, back to the leadership, the leaders need to make sure that they embed a culture where there are no recriminations when something does go wrong. And importantly, you learn lessons. So learn lessons from within your organisation. But, and I was talking with a client about this just yesterday, learn the lessons from what's going on elsewhere in the industry. It's really important to look at, say, for example, the Information Commissioner's website on case history and where they're seeing problems around information security and data privacy. Learn the lessons from others and surround yourself as well with people that can help you understand where there may be risk within your business. I mentioned as well the challenge that small businesses see around the language which is used in the industry. Challenge the jargon. If you don't understand something, then just shout it out. I was working with a client 4 or 5 years ago, and the client was told by his IT provider, "It's really complicated. You won't understand that." The IT provider's contract was terminated later that day because the IT provider did not make the effort to explain why something was complicated. You know, the person I was working with runs a very, very successful business. He's very, very astute. He knows his stuff. He just needed to understand the IT piece around it a little bit more. So challenge the jargon. If somebody's telling you something that you don't understand, just gently challenge and say, I don't understand. Could you explain that slightly differently, please? And if you're not happy with the answer, find somebody who can give you the right answer. Which comes to my last point around identifying trusted partners. Look around you for partners that are trusted, that are qualified, that are responsible and respected within the industry. Clearly, we've got 2 great individuals on this call, Tom and Don, who know their stuff. There will be other people who know their stuff as well. Don't take the advice from the person that you met down the pub or something that you might have seen online somewhere. Look for respected and trusted partners. The National Cyber Security Centre, IASME, the Cyber Resilience Centres. We have a number of cyber resilience centres around the UK who, again, will have identified some trusted partners for you. So for me, this is around a combination of leadership and making sure that your team, both immediate team and extended team, know what they're doing.
Thanks, Helen. I think that all of those points stand out as being, you know, really, really important. And I think what people commonly overlook is the strength that leadership has in all of these areas to build that security situation, and how important it is that the leaders of organizations understand why it's important that they're behind the solution. I think that was really well articulated. Thank you. Don, on to you, talking about process.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, process is probably one of the critical components of a robust cybersecurity strategy. It ensures that the security measures that are implemented consistently, comprehensively, and systematically. And some of the key elements that sit in behind that are it's critical to understand what assets are needing protection. By identifying and assessing your risks, it allows the organization to prioritize what needs immediate attention and what can wait. Once the risks have been identified, the organization can then implement mitigation measures to reduce or control these risks. And unfortunately, it's not a one and done exercise. It's really, really important to continually monitor the risks, to track and adjust strategies as and when necessary. This is an ongoing exercise. Yeah, the other one is compliance, right? In this highly complex and highly regulated environment in which we now live, it's critical to identify and comply with relevant laws and regulations, ensuring that the organization stays on the right side of legal requirements. Key to this is the development and enforcement of internal security policies to maintain a consistent security posture. But it is necessary to place regular auditing and reporting in place to verify that compliance and adjust your policies as necessary. So again, it's about, this is not a static picture. This is an evolving picture that one needs to continually reassess. The key one for me, though, is incident management. As my old man used to say to me, failure to plan is planning to fail. It's critical to sit down and develop an incident response plan. Who does what, when, and in what order? In other words, who's dealing with the regulators? Who's dealing with the press? Who's dealing with stakeholders, investors, staff? Who's dealing with the technical issue, the forensics, etc.? It's important to have a plan of that, because when you're up to your neck in crocodile, sometimes it's very difficult to remember that you were in there to drain the swamp, right? But the most important part that I cannot emphasize enough is the value of a post-incident review. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hit, it's a matter of when you get hit. But when you do, it's important to document and understand what went well and what did not. And then based upon those lessons, update your policies and procedures and work on those things. Again, the continually evolving picture. Data protection. In today's highly digitally interconnected world, data has become an incredibly valuable asset. This is what the hackers are after 9 times out of 10, right? They call it the new oil, right? Data is a powerful resource that, when harnessed effectively, can drive growth, innovation, and competitive advantage. That said, with great power comes great responsibility, and data privacy and security are crucial to ensuring that data privacy Some key steps to consider when you're looking at this one here as to how you classify your data. By identifying and classifying your data according to its sensitivity and importance, it helps you in applying the right levels of protection to the various types of data. It's also important to implement strict access controls to ensure that only authorized people can access sensitive data. Using things like multi-factor authentication and role-based access control will enhance the security. And it's important to ensure that your data is encrypted, so that even if it is compromised, people aren't able to understand what that data is. It's important to encrypt your data both at rest, when it is in the database, but also when it's on the wire, going between databases, between applications, that it is encrypted. It's important to have that one there. The key to this one here is to regularly back up your data, and more importantly, to test your data plans to ensure the integrity and the availability in the case of an incident. And then finally, as a process, the key thing from this is probably the most important takeaway from this slide here, is staff security awareness training. Your staff are the front line in preventing cyber security attacks. That can either be your strongest defense or that can be your weakest link. the best way to do this is to continually test this, is to simulate phishing attacks, to test and improve your employees' abilities to recognize and to respond to threats. So going back to what Helen was saying about, if you see a mistake, raise your hand. Don't hope that it goes away, right? There is cost-effective software in the market today. Going back to my earlier point about this is an opportunity for companies. It allows you to conduct controlled phishing attacks, monitor the compliance, and where appropriate, reinforce security policies, training, and best practices. So those are the 5 key takeaways that I would suggest probably companies need to be considering when they're looking at this cybersecurity strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Don. And I think the real importance of this process element in our people, process, and technology is the process element. It guides the people element, but then codifies why the technology element is important. So it actually acts as the glue between all 3 of the elements. And I think having that broad spectrum across the whole series of people, process, and technology is what's going to really strengthen that security solution that we're looking to create. So from my perspective, I'm coming from Red Helix, it falls to me to talk about technology. And as we've discussed all the way through this presentation, there's a whole load of jargon where the industry can be quite confusing in the way that it talks about itself, and especially the way that it articulates the technology element of cybersecurity. And so what I've tried to do here is put it into an analogy that will be able to really carefully and really clearly articulate where we can be of an assistance. So you can see on the slide, on the left-hand side, we have an example of physical security. Maybe think about an industrial unit or maybe a manufacturing unit. And then on the right-hand side, I've articulated that in cybersecurity terminologies, and the text on the far right is then the principles that underline both of the solutions that we're presenting, and those principles are extant across both. So on the left-hand side, we've got cameras. They act as our sensors. Also, you might have sensors on doors or windows that act as a deterrent, but they're sensing the environment and gathering data on the current situation. On their own, they are completely passive, but you'll also notice that we have the security guard. He's monitoring the feed from these sensors. He's continuously observing the environment and the data that he's being sent, and he's analyzing that situation to have that understand. And in my notes, I've underlined understand, and that's what brings the value add to him being there rather than just sensors being on the ground. These directly link to the cameras being the network detection and response, looking at your network, and the endpoint detection and response, looking into the mechanics and workings of your endpoints. And they're all being watched and understood by your security operating center, which is filled with people like your security guard there, who is understanding the feeds that he's getting. There's also the security card is also going to be concerned with some local intelligence. So I've represented this with a little newspaper, and he's going to be looking at crime reporting, local police reports. He's probably got a contact with the local police that he's talking to on a regular basis about local trends and local criminals and how they are behaving. And he's using that to feed back into the security situation to make sure that he's constantly evolving and that he's constantly got a updated security profile. He's understanding why they're likely to be targeted, what elements in their ecosystem are the criminals most likely to be after, whether it be scrap metal, whether it be pallets left in the yard, etc., etc. And he's using that to then understand what to point his cameras at or where he should do his patrol and those things. That's a really active part of security. And we link that on the cybersecurity side to the box, the circle where you see threat intelligence. There's also the magnifying glass, and that represents investigations. And so the security guard is going to be able to look at the data. He's going to be able to patrol his environment with the understanding that he has from his intelligence. And he's going to look for clues which may show that criminals have been conducting reconnaissance or maybe there's been attempted entry into the environment. This links directly with the SEAM on the right-hand side, which is Security Information and Event Management. And that's a tool used in the Security Operating Center to monitor the environment and understand whether there's some indications that some malicious actors have been present. And as I mentioned before, the key characteristics of both these solutions are extant. They're continuously monitoring, they're providing full coverage, it's active because there's a constant understanding of what's going on. It's intelligence-led, which means it's kept up to date and very conscious of most relevant threats and how the criminals are behaving. And finally, it's ready to respond. That's probably one of the most important elements of this, is once something is detected, you have to be ready to respond. And that's where your Security Operating Center comes into play. So I've brief canter through the technology solution that we would like to, put on the end of people and process. And I think a lot of people focus very closely on technology and they focus less on people and process. But I think what we're all agreed on is the importance of all three elements, especially when you're a small to medium-sized business and looking at how you can create the best security solution for your budget. So we've talked about the current environment at the beginning. We've talked about how we see potential solutions being constructed through people, process, and technology. But a common thread that I see speaking with lots of clients and that we all see through our interaction with small to medium-sized businesses is how they can articulate cybersecurity in terms of business benefits so they're able to gain investment, but also to ensure that the leadership within businesses understand why this is an important investment for the security of the business, and from a risk management perspective, why it's important. So we've come up with these 5 bullet points, which Helen's going to brief back to you.
Thanks, Tom, and congratulations on being able to summarise all that technology in 3 minutes without using loads of jargon. I just wish everybody in the industry could do that. It would make life so much easier. So what do I see as some of the business benefits? And I know that Tom and Don are going to come in on this as well. For me, the key one is competitive advantage for new business. We are seeing across the board, across every industry at the moment, an increase in the number of supply chain assessments that are being done. Those really long, sometimes quite tedious and complex spreadsheets, documents, whatever, you have to complete. If you can complete those questionnaires easily, confidently, in the safe knowledge that what you have got is a really robust cybersecurity posture, then you are going to win more business, and just being able to answer them, as I say, in a confident way will open doors. And then I think the second point, the flip of that same coin, is that by having that posture there, you're able to protect your existing business. I love Don's analogy in speaking about cyber insurance. For me, this is not about and again, bringing in Tom's analogy of the factory and the warehouses, there is no point standing in the ruins of your smouldering business going, I've got insurance policies, because it's gone. You want to make sure that you protect what you've got today in order that you can build and go forward for the future. So for me, and prevention is so much better than cure. So protecting that existing business, just making sure that you're going to be here tomorrow and being less attractive to a cyber criminal is really important. In terms of the supply chain, as I've mentioned, we are seeing significant scrutiny at the moment on what is happening within the supply chain. We're seeing a lot of legislation coming through from Europe. We're likely to see similar changes in legislation within the UK around what we're expecting to see within supply chain. So making sure that you are not going to be the weakest link in that supply chain to your clients or to your customers is really important. And as I've said there as well, compliance with legislation is something that we all as business owners have to do. We may not like the legislation, but we have to comply with it. There's no point driving down the motorway at 80 miles an hour. We know we're likely to receive a speeding ticket. So if we can be responsible business owners and comply with that legislation, then clearly that's one headache that we can all avoid. And finally, and as a small business owner, and I'm going to ask Tom and Don to comment on these as well, avoiding unexpected costs, there is without a doubt going to be significantly more focus on what the cybersecurity posture is of SMEs across the UK and beyond. And I've always felt as a business owner that it's much easier to do something when you want to do it, when you're in control of the investment that you might need to make, when you're in control of the changes that you may need to make within business. If you have a customer that comes to you and says you must do X, Y, Z, then suddenly you are not in control. And therefore that lack of control, or that lack of being able to plan your own destiny, comes with some unexpected cost. And similarly, if we are unfortunate enough to have some sort of cyber attack, then that is likely to come with cost as well. The cost of rectification, the cost of communication, the cost of any future improvements, etc. That is all going to bring cost. And again, none of us likes unexpected cost, especially in the current economic climate. So Tom, Don, I'm going to hand back to you.
Don, do you want to go first? Have you got any comments on those bullet points?
Yeah, I think the unexpected cost one. I think I did a talk the other day in which we were talking about. Yeah, the big headline number is always the ransomware number. You know, go pay the ransom. But there are the below the margin, below the headline costs, is things of reputation. Yeah, it's going to make it so much harder for you to get new business if you've been attacked. It's going to be hard for you to retain your clients. And it's really, really important. And I like where Helen was going with that one there, of being in control of this. If you're in control of the story, you don't have to do everything on day one. You know, this is a journey, right, that you do go on. And you can start that journey, and you can start with some very low cost initiatives that put you streets ahead of where your competitors are, that do give you a competitive advantage. And the supply chain risk is real out there. Where, you know, I'm working with a big company, manufacturing company, or a supplier to the manufacturing industry. They are now starting to see that motor manufacturer actually starting to impose, unless you reach these levels of cybersecurity and you can prove it to us, we don't want to do business with you. And suddenly the story starts moving away from you very, very quickly, and you're on the back foot rather than on the front foot. So I like the idea of getting on the front foot and being in control of the story.
Yeah, and I echo those comments as well, Don. I think for me, what stands out, I really like to put it into the whole thing into a really positive light and think about the competitive advantage.
Yes.
It's going to become more prevalent in 2025 that businesses are going to start looking at who they are working with more closely, given the interconnectedness of all our systems. You genuinely, if you can prove in discussions with prospecting businesses that you take cybersecurity seriously, you're going to have a competitive advantage over clients who aren't, other competitors who aren't able to articulate in the same way. So it will give you a competitive advantage. And as you mentioned, it's incremental steps to show that you've got a conscious cybersecurity mindset throughout the business. I really like that slide, and I hope that is going to help our audience in articulating those business benefits. You know, what are the positives from doing this? I think it's really important to understand that.
Unitive, yeah.
So this brings us to our last slide, and we didn't want to just end on 3 pictures, so we moved the pictures to the side and we gave you 5 bullet points, and these are our key takeaways from this discussion. We probably could have come up with 20 key takeaways, but we narrowed it down to these 5, and so we're going to talk them through before we finish. So if you've not taken anything from our discussion thus far, make sure you scribble these down, because this is what we really wanted you to pick out as being important and what we agree. So, Don, I think you were starting with number 1.
Yes, and again, this was about this being a journey, and it's important to not look at this as there's an old saying about how do you eat an elephant, you know, and the answer is one bite at a time, right? Cybersecurity is just that elephant. It's massive, it's evolving, it constantly changes. But with the targeted spend of limited resources, you can make massive improvements. And particularly, as you were talking about earlier on there, Tom, making it a competitive advantage in you because you're in control of that story. So I do think that there are some housekeeping things that companies can do very, very easily, very, very cost effectively, that are going to give them huge improvements in their security posture. Do they need to continue on that journey? Absolutely. This is an ongoing thing. It constantly evolves. Will there be money that needs to be spent? Absolutely. But you can make it targeted in order to give you in order to maximize the benefit.
Thanks, Don. Now, number 2 and number 3 fall to me to discuss. And I think what we've discussed thus far covers number 2, you know, doing the basics well. And that is across people, process, and technology, and understanding where you currently are and how you can make incremental improvements. There's so much resource out there to provide insight into how this can be done. The NCSC is a really good resource for small businesses looking into cyber essentials, and also getting sort of assistance from people just like Helen and Don, who are the experts in providing that consultative discussion around you know, where you can make those incremental improvements. It doesn't necessarily need to be your enterprise grade large financial services solution. There are, as we've described, you know, baby steps that can be made that are going to make a significant enhancement to your security situation. And I think a large one, which is can be really easy to enact, is that number 3, cyber awareness training. As I mentioned right at the beginning, the 4 main attack vectors or threats, sorry, that we see being prevalent right now and into 2025 for small to medium-sized businesses all prey on the weaknesses in the system which sit with the largest attack surface, which is our people. And that's because the way that humans interact with computers is the easiest area to attack, rather than the other way around. And so having that awareness and that culture, which is led, as we spoke about, top down in a business, is really important, and something that you can enact really in a really straightforward way. Again, NCSC has got lots of guidance on how that can be done. And Helen, number 4 and number 5.
Thanks, Tom. So seek out trusted expertise. We've mentioned this a few times. Surround yourself with people who know a little bit more, who know what they're doing, and who you trust to give you the right advice and guidance. And I would also extend this as well to thinking about who is in your supply chain. So make sure that when you are choosing suppliers, you ask them the question, what are they doing as well around ensuring that they have a good cybersecurity posture. And once again, there are lots of people that can help you understand that situation. And then finally, I think the key takeaway is, and we've all said this independently, this is absolutely not a journey. Sorry, not a destination. This is absolutely a journey. There is not a question of, if you do 6 months work, then you'll all be done and dusted by the 1st of July next year. This is an ever evolving, ever changing landscape with new solutions coming to market, new threats, unfortunately, coming to be present within us, and therefore just keeping a little bit up to date with what's going on is really important, and making sure that, as I say, this isn't just a one-time project that you're going to do over the next couple of weeks or couple of months, but making sure you continue to be active within the cyber landscape.
Brilliant, Helen. Thank you very much. And I think, you know, that wraps up, you know, the main bulk of our discussion. We've got some questions which I'm just going to go for it. So first question, how much will it cost to put cybersecurity into my business? I am a £20 million revenue business. So I'll answer that one coming from a sort of technical perspective, but then we could probably have a more broader discussion. I think what's really important there is the size of your workforce, but also the complexity of the systems that you've got. And I think, you know, that's definitely, it can be quite complicated to understand with only just that one element, but it's certainly not insurmountable in terms of the size of your business and what you may need. Don, have you got any comments on that?
Again, I think you're right. This is how long's a piece of string, right? It needs a lot more than just one data point. But you know, thumbsuck. You know, when you're looking at the financial services environment, you know, they're looking at 10% plus of their revenue is focused towards cybersecurity initiatives. You know, the more manufacturing, more, you know, slightly smaller organizations, that then falls away down to 3 or 4%, right? But I have seen the whole gamut come through. But again, it's about a journey. It's not about, I'm going to put, you know, 2 million or 3 million into my cybersecurity and it's done. The answer is it isn't. It's about building a culture. It's about taking it forward, and that doesn't take an awful lot of money. So you can start low, and then as you get more mature in your processes, you might need to spend some more. But yeah, as I say, it's a very difficult question to give a single answer to.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably find out with the second question that we've got here, which is what is the biggest breach payout and or reputational damage example? I think, you know, what's interesting at the moment, and I posted on LinkedIn about it the other day, is what's going on within healthcare within the US. There's a major healthcare business who handles a lot of personal and very sensitive data that sits at the center of the healthcare ecosystem with the US, and subsidiary businesses tap into the systems in order to access people's healthcare records. And they've had a major breach in 2024. And it's going through litigation and legal processes at the moment, but that's likely to be the biggest breach that's ever been recorded. And I can imagine that the fine that they get struck with from the US government is going to be significant. So one to look out in the news for, and you can imagine their reputational damage is also going to be significant given the emotive feeling people have around their health data, and the fact that, you know, this has really impacted people's ability to get care and things like that. So the final question we've got, what skills, and I'm coming to you, Helen, what skills do I need internally to manage cybersecurity, and who should own it?
So what skills do I need? So that's again a multifaceted question, because the cybersecurity thing covers so many different angles, doesn't it? It's obviously the technology element, but there's also the people process element. So it's not just down to one particular skill set. It's going to be supplier assurance, it's going to be education and training, it's going to be obviously making sure your IT provider is going to be doing the right thing, it's communication, it's about linking up with HR. So there's lots of different facets to that overarching cybersecurity headline. Who should own it? I'm a huge believer that somebody at the senior leadership team should be accountable. Absolutely 100% accountable, with individuals within the organisation being then responsible for supporting and managing and driving that process forward. I don't believe it can be one person who's responsible for everything, because, as I say, it has so many different threads right the way through the organisation, and it's not just an IT problem. What do I think you need? If I was looking for one person to be accountable, I think they need to be open-minded. They need to be a really good team player. They need to be open to seeking advice and guidance from many other people, not just within their own organisation, but across the industry. And they need to be budget holders and able to make good decisions.
And
Don,
I think,
I'm very interested in your experience as well, what you've been seeing from a consulting perspective.
And I think what's really important is to recognize, you know, someone in that position's got to recognize what they don't know, and seek out that trusted provider who can give them advice, you know, just like people like you guys, absolutely, and understand where they need to bring that assistance in to make sure that they're getting the job done, rather than what I know you guys have experience of, which is people not doing it correctly and ending up with a poor solution, which results in a unfortunate situation. But brilliant. Okay, well, those are all the questions that we've got, and that was really brilliant of our audience for putting those in the chat. So thank you very much for interacting with our webinar. We've really enjoyed pulling this content together because we all recognize that we have a shared interest in assisting those small to medium-sized businesses, and we see on a constant basis the requirement to provide knowledge and assistance to these businesses. So hopefully we've achieved that in what we've done. If we have triggered or anything in your mind that has made you want, you know, ask questions, make sure you get in touch. Our contact details are on the slide, and you can find all of us on LinkedIn. So it falls to me to say, Helen and Don, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to spend time with you, putting this together, but also broadcasting. And I look forward to working with you soon and hearing from our audience if they want to get in touch. So thank you very much for everybody, and I'll close there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.